Number 9. Soviet bomb shelters. As the prospect of nuclear warfare with the United States seemed more and more likely, the Soviet Union built thousands of fallout shelters filled with food, water, weapons, along with other provisions that would help keep people alive if disaster struck. To this day, no one knows just how many of these shelters were built. A medium-sized city with a population of 200,000 would have between 70 and 100 of them, while major cities like Moscow and Leningrad would have up to 10 times this many according to Russia Beyond. Late last year, images surfaced of a unique round-shaped Soviet bomb shelter in an undisclosed location. The person who posted the pictures explained that the site most likely dates back to the 1950s, but that they don't know exactly when it was built. It's flooded with waist-deep water, requiring the visitors to wear hazmat suits, and consists of a central round room surrounded by the rest of the shelter's rooms and hallways. This is an uncharacteristic shape for a structure of its kind, suggesting that it may have been one of the earlier built shelters. The photos revealed that it was equipped with oxygen cylinders, batteries, a ventilation shaft, backup power, and a decontamination area or sanitary checkpoint. It contained similar fixtures to other Soviet shelters, which were equipped to provide for a group of survivors' basic needs in the event of nuclear fallout. Knowing where the shelter is might provide some clues about its distinct layout and why it was left waterlogged, but the visitor failed to disclose any details that might give away the location. Number 8. Fogelsang. Located deep in the woods of northeastern Germany, the village of Fogelsang has always remained hidden from the public eye. It was founded during the 18th century by settlers who felled timber for a living. In 1882, it became part of a state forest. Fogelsang's remoteness was particularly appealing to the Soviet military, which built a base and housing nearby in 1951. Just a year later, there were 15,000 people living there, including military members and their families. It was the third largest Soviet base in East Germany, with around 550 buildings including shops, offices, a gym, a school, a theater, and medical facilities. The Soviets managed to keep Fogelsang a complete secret from German civilians, moving nuclear weapons into the city right under the population's nose. To avoid being discovered, they carried out all their training exercises at night. It's unclear how long the Soviets kept nuclear weapons at Fogelsang. Official records state that they were removed in 1959, but American and British military intelligence found that the missiles might have remained there until after the Cuban Missile Crisis. The Russian military abandoned the site in 1994, leaving behind communist-era relics including an obelisk featuring a carving of Vladimir Lenin and artwork depicting soldiers, military equipment, workers, and farmers. They also left behind evidence of the seemingly normal residential life that the population enjoyed, including liquor bottles and other everyday items, sports equipment, and murals featuring nature scenes, dancers in traditional Russian dress, and cartoon characters. All the buildings at Fogelsang have been demolished, but a few photographers managed to capture pictures and footage of the ruins before they were destroyed. Number 7. Bechavinka. Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula was once home to a top-secret submarine base and military town called Bechavinka. Located in the country's far east, the site was established during the 1960s. The residential area consisted of 8 apartment buildings ranging from 3 to 5 stories high, a kindergarten and a school, a hostel, a post office, a grocery store, and a club for entertainment. All the necessary installations were built on the military portion of the property, including barracks, storage facilities, a commandant's offices, a headquarters building, a boiler room, a diesel substation, and a warehouse for fuel. A supply ship stopped at Bechavinka once weekly with food, essential items, and mail. It was the remote settlement's only connection to the outside world. There was no land route between Bechavinka and other cities, and the only way to reach it was by boat or helicopter. The base closed down due to cost-saving measures in 1996, 5 years after the Soviet Union's collapse. Residents simply packed up and moved, leaving behind a ghost town that the Russian government conveniently ignored. Today, Bechavinka remains pretty much how it was left, minus the effects of time and weather. Because it's hidden and difficult to access, it's been largely spared from vandalism. The ruins consist of rusting ships and derelict buildings filled with personal belongings and other items including toys, newspapers, equipment manuals, textbooks, children's drawings, and furniture. Number 6. ATT Microwave Towers. In Fairview, Kansas, there is an old microwave tower with an AT&T sign nearby. It was once part of the company's long-distance communication division known as Long Lines, which was started in 1951. The network expanded over the following decades, but by the time the internet came along, the technology was outdated and inferior. During the late 90s, AT&T sold most of its towers. Writing for The New Yorker in 2015, Ingrid Burrington reported that the microwave tower in Fairview still belongs to the company according to the records. But when she visited, the site seemed mostly forgotten, and nobody answered the door at a nearby building with an AT&T mailbox out front. Ingrid found it ironic that the town bears the same name as a national security agent surveillance program that AT&T helped with during the Cold War era. She was skeptical about the microwave tower having anything to do with the Fairview program, but did find a few curious coincidences in her research. For one, the Fairview AT&T site once contained a line connecting the nearby Offutt Air Force Base to the company's network. It also connected to the military telephone system Autovon and may have been a relay point to the Semi-Automatic Ground Environment or SAGE network. SAGE had a pioneering role in the development of an experimental network called ARPANET, which functioned as a forerunner to the Internet. This doesn't necessarily suggest that the microwave tower in Fairview had anything to do with the Fairview project as many suspect, but it would make perfect sense if it did. At the very least, it makes sense to wonder if the tower's military and government connections run deeper than what records show. What are your thoughts on the AT&T and microwave towers? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 5. Oyster Atom's fallout shelter. As the looming threat of nuclear disaster became an ever-present reality during the 1960s, the U.S. government built shelters for housing defensive missiles and as a refuge for civilians in the event of an attack. One of these bunkers was built in 1962 in the basement beneath the Oyster Atom School in Washington, D.C. It sits behind an inconspicuous green door that offers no clue as to what's on the other side. Designed to fit up to 100 people, the no-frills shelter consists of a long, narrow, and dark space where survivors would wade through the nuclear fallout of an attack. It was stocked with 2 weeks' worth of provisions, including barrels of drinking water, all-purpose survival biscuits, and other supplies that still line the walls today. These items are still there today. There are sanitation kits, which are actually portable toilets topped with rubber seats for comfort, although it's hard to imagine that there'd be anything comfortable about doing one's business in a crowded room with limited ventilation. The bunker also contains medical supplies and brochures on how to handle emergencies. Thankfully, like all the other shelters that were built at the height of America's paranoia over impending nuclear doom, it was never used. Number 4. Black Hills Ordnance Depot. Built in rural South Dakota in 1942, the Black Hills Ordnance Depot originally functioned as a storage facility for the military's growing supply of weapons and munitions. Most of its civilian workforce lived in federally owned housing located on the 21,000-acre property. Named for the shape of its concrete munitions storage buildings, the community of Igloo had public schools, a hospital, post office, grocery store, church, theater, swimming pool, and recreation center. With so many soldiers off to war, the facility hired workers from outside the traditional labor pool of military-aged men, turning to women and Native Americans to fill its open positions. Igloo was both a melting pot and a peaceful blue-collar community where residents got along despite their ethnic differences, which was unusual for the time. Its population fluctuated, peaking at around 4,200 residents in 1945. After the war, the staffing needs decreased, leaving around 1,800 residents. As the Vietnam War ramped up during the 1960s, the U.S. government cut military spending anywhere it could in order to fund the conflict, and the decision was made to permanently close the depot. Some of the structures, including the homes, were relocated or dismantled. The remaining 575 munitions buildings at the site have sat empty since 1967. In 2016, they were purchased by the Vivos Group, which is redeveloping the property into a survival complex. The former storage buildings are being converted into bunkers where owners can seek refuge during a catastrophic event. Number 3. Scrunda I. Scrunda I was one of more than 40 hidden bases and towns where the Soviet Union carried out top-secret research and military operations. Located in central Latvia, the 100-acre site functioned as a radar complex containing an early warning system for detecting incoming ballistic missiles. At its height, Scrunda I was home to 5,000 people. It had 10 apartment buildings for housing Soviet soldiers and their families, along with schools, a gymnasium, a theater, factories, administrative buildings, and all the other fixtures of a normal town. The site also contained numerous military installations, including barracks, underground bunkers, machine workshops, a water tower, and pumping stations. After the Soviet Union fell, the Latvian government made it clear that it wanted the Russians to leave. The two countries entered an agreement that required Scrunda I to be vacated and dismantled by early 2000. The last residents cleared out in 1999, taking what they could and leaving behind furniture, photos, toys, clothing, and other personal items. Like many other Cold War-era Soviet sites, it proved too expensive for the Latvian government to rebuild or demolish Scrunda I, and its 60 buildings were simply left to rot. The property fell further into disrepair over the years amid repeated failed attempts to auction it off. In 2015, the government awarded half of the site to the Latvian military and announced plans to lease the other half at a low price with the agreement that the renter will redevelop it. Number 2. Communist resorts. During the Cold War, the Eastern Bloc espoused the philosophy that average working people should be able to enjoy vacations and leisure time. Starting in the late 1950s, a series of holiday resorts were built throughout Poland to facilitate the workers' right to rest. They were abandoned following the collapse of communism in the late 1980s. Urban explorer and photographer Marcin Wojciak traveled across the country, snapping pictures of these defunct resorts, which have sat neglected since their closure. He shares haunting images of the derelict buildings under the Instagram handle Cosmoderna. Many of the resorts are located in prime locations, including on lake shores, in the mountains, or by the sea. Speaking with the First News, Wojciak explained that it would be really difficult to obtain building rights on these types of sites nowadays, and that their locations alone speak to how Poland was a completely different world with different values during the communist era. One photo reveals a moss and graffiti-covered swimming pool. Another shows a seemingly old-fashioned bowling alley which would have been considered a luxury at the time it was being used. There are patterned mosaics with political overtones, artwork depicting Smurfs and other happy cartoon characters, floral patterned carpets and furniture, and a vibrant stained glass window featuring birds. A stage and a left-behind foosball table give an idea of some of the activities and entertainment that the resort's working-class visitors enjoyed. There are also big windows, and lots of them, offering ample views of the nature that surrounds the buildings. Number 1. Montauk Air Force Station. The Montauk Air Force Station was built in 1942 on the easternmost point of Long Island, New York. After World War II, the military upgraded it and renamed it Camp Hero. It consists of concrete bunkers that were built to house defense artillery, a 126-foot radar dish, and several buildings which were built to resemble a fishing village. The base was decommissioned in 1981, and within a few years, rumors began swirling about the military carrying out psychological warfare experiments at the site. There's also talk of something called the Montauk Project, alleging that the government kidnapped orphans and runaways and experimented on them at Camp Hero. These claims were published in a 1992 book by someone named Preston B. Nichols. He and other conspiracy theorists have long accused the base of being used for paranormal and psychological experiments. In fact, Nichols alleged that he was tortured there and that he recovered repressed memories about his suffering and true identity through hypnosis. After he wrote his book, numerous other people came forward with similar claims. And while most of the allegations have been debunked, the wild tales about Camp Hero live on. It was even the inspiration for the popular Netflix series Stranger Things. What's left of the base now is part of a state park. It was deemed problematic to try removing the antenna, so that was left in place along with the site's other fixtures. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to learn more about abandoned Cold War sites, let us know in the comments below and be sure to subscribe. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time for another amazing video right here on American Eye.